There are towns that time forgot, places where saloons still stand, where the dust of the gold rush era hasn't settled, and where history lives in complete isolation. These aren't the famous ghost towns you see on postcards. These are the forgotten ones, hidden, dangerous to reach, and almost impossible to find. Today, we're going to explore 15 of these lost towns and uncover the secrets they've been keeping for over a century. Subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Number 1. Shaniko, Oregon. In the early 1900s, this place was known as the wool capital of the world. Thousands of sheep ranchers brought their product here, and the town exploded almost overnight. At its peak, Shaniko had multiple hotels, banks, and a massive wool warehouse that processed millions of pounds every year. But here's what killed it. The railroad changed its route. When the trains stopped coming in 1911, the money stopped too. Within a decade, the population dropped from 600 to nearly zero. Today, the entire Main Street is frozen in time. The hotel still has furniture in the rooms. The jail cells are exactly as they were left. But here's the creepy part. Locals refuse to enter certain buildings after dark. They say you can hear footsteps on the wooden floors upstairs where nobody should be. Number 2. Cisco, Utah. This tiny settlement sits along Interstate 70, but almost nobody stops there. Back in the 1880s, Cisco was a water stop for steam trains crossing the desert. It grew into a small town with a saloon, gas stations, and even a school. The problem was location. When modern highways bypassed it in the 1930s, people left without looking back. What makes Cisco different is how little has been touched. Rusted cars from the 1950s still sit where they were abandoned. The gas station pumps are standing but haven't worked in decades. And inside the old buildings, you'll find calendars stuck on dates from 70 years ago. It's like everyone just vanished mid-sentence. The strangest detail? People who camp nearby report seeing lights moving through the buildings at night, even though there's no electricity for miles. Number 3. Paria, Utah. Hidden in the cliffs near the Arizona border, Paria was a Mormon settlement founded in the 1870s. The pioneers thought they could farm along the Paria River, but they were wrong. Flash floods destroyed crops year after year. By 1890, most families had given up and left. What's shocking is how remote this place still is. You need a four-wheel drive vehicle and a permit just to get close. The few structures that survived are slowly being reclaimed by the red desert. But here's the detail that stands out. The old cemetery is still there, tucked between rock formations. Wooden grave markers show families who lost children to disease, drowning, and starvation. Some visitors say they hear children's voices echoing through the canyons, even though the nearest living person is miles away. Number 4. Kendall, Montana. Gold brought people here in 1901, and within 2 years, Kendall had 1,500 residents and one of the most advanced mining operations in the state. They used a process called cyanide leaching to extract gold from low-grade ore. It worked, but it also poisoned the land. When the mine closed in 1911, the town died immediately. Today, Kendall is almost impossible to find unless you know exactly where to look. Dirt roads that barely exist lead to collapsed buildings and rusted machinery half buried in the ground. The creepiest part is the contamination. The soil around the old processing plant is still toxic over a century later. Nothing grows there. No animals go near it. It's a dead zone in the middle of Montana grasslands, a permanent scar from the rush for gold. Number 5. Coolidge, New Mexico. This town appeared in 1909 when copper was discovered in the Black Range Mountains. Company mines built a company town from scratch with housing, a school, and a general store. But the copper ran out faster than anyone expected. By 1915, it was over. What makes Coolidge fascinating is how hidden it remains. The only way in is a rough mountain road that's impassable most of the year. The town sits in a valley surrounded by peaks, completely cut off from civilization. And here's the strange part. The company houses are still standing, windows intact, doors hanging open. Inside, you'll find rusted bed frames, old shoes, and children's toys left behind. It's like everyone just walked out one day and never came back. Some people say it was because of a mine disaster the company never reported. Number 6. Gleeson, Arizona. Founded in 1900 when copper was found in the Dragoon Mountains, Gleeson grew to 500 people almost overnight. It had everything: a hospital, school, jail, even a baseball team. But the mines played out by 1939 and everyone left. What's different about Gleeson is the isolation. It sits at the end of a long dirt road in the middle of the desert, surrounded by nothing but cactus and rattlesnakes. The old jail is still standing, with cells that look like they could still lock. The hospital ruins show rusted surgical tables and broken glass scattered across the floors. But here's what visitors report: strange sounds coming from the old mine shafts at night, voices calling for help from deep underground. Nobody goes down there anymore, but locals swear miners who died in cave-ins never made it back to the surface. Number 7. Swansea, Arizona. In 1909, copper turned this patch of desert into a boom town with 750 residents. The mine was so productive, they built a smelter right there to process the ore on site. But when copper prices crashed in 1924, the company shut it down without warning. Workers were told to pack up and leave within days. Today, Swansea is one of the most remote ghost towns in Arizona. The road in is barely maintained, and summer temperatures hit 120 degrees. But what survived is incredible. The massive smelter stone shack still towers over the desert, visible for miles. Inside the ruins, you'll find the company office with papers still scattered on desks, and the workers' quarters where boots and tools were left exactly where they fell. The disturbing part is the graveyard. Several unmarked graves sit on a hill above town, and according to records, at least a dozen men died in accidents the company never publicly acknowledged. Number 8. Cahone, Colorado. This tiny town in the high desert started as a trading post in the 1880s, then briefly boomed when nearby ranchers needed supplies, but it never really took off. What makes Cahone interesting is what happened after everyone left. The buildings are still there, a general store, a schoolhouse, even a dance hall, but nature has started taking them back. Trees grow through roofs, sagebrush fills the rooms, and here's the eerie detail. Inside the old store, canned goods from the 1940s still line the shelves. The labels are faded, but you can still read them. It's like everyone just walked out one day and never came back. People who explore the area say they find personal items scattered everywhere: letters, photographs, children's homework. It feels less like a town that was abandoned and more like a town that was evacuated in a hurry. Number 9. Castle Dome, Arizona. Silver brought hundreds of miners to this brutal stretch of desert in the 1860s. Castle Dome grew into a rough camp with saloons, a post office, and constant violence. Men died in gunfights, mining accidents, and from simple dehydration in the unforgiving heat. When the silver ran out in the early 1900s, the town was abandoned completely. Here's what makes Castle Dome different. It's now privately owned and partially restored, but only a handful of people visit each year because it's so hard to reach. The desert around it is extreme. No water, no shade, temperatures that can kill you in hours. But inside the old buildings, the owner has collected artifacts that tell the real story. Rusted guns, mining tools, and personal belongings of men who never made it home. The most haunting exhibit is a collection of letters written by miners to families they would never see again. Number 10. Chloride, New Mexico. In the 1880s, silver turned this mountain valley into a town of 3,000 people. It had mills, saloons, a red light district, and enough violence to keep multiple gravediggers employed full-time. But when silver prices collapsed in 1893, Chloride emptied out in a matter of weeks. What's remarkable is how well preserved it remains. The town sits in such a remote location that vandals and scavengers never found it. Buildings stand with walls intact, roofs still on, and belongings inside. But there's a darker layer to the story. The mine tailings around Chloride are heavily contaminated with arsenic and lead. The ground itself is poisoned. Nothing grows near the old processing sites. And according to reports from the time, dozens of miners died from what they called mountain fever, likely heavy metal poisoning that nobody understood back then. Number 11, Pearce, Arizona. Gold was discovered here in 1894 by a rancher who literally stumbled over a gold nugget while chasing a runaway cow. Within months, Pearce had stores, saloons, and over 1,500 residents. The Commonwealth mine produced millions in gold before shutting down in the 1930s. What makes Pearce fascinating is how it died twice. First, when the gold ran out, then again when the highway bypassed it in the 1960s. Today, it's a true hidden town. The old general store still stands, completely intact, with shelves full of products from the 1940s. The post office has mail sorting boxes on the wall, and the jail, a tiny stone building, still has chains bolted to the floor. But here's the unsettling part. At night, people report hearing music coming from where the saloon used to be. Old-timey piano music that stops the second you get close. Number 12, Mogollon, New Mexico. Tucked into the Mogollon Mountains at 7,000 feet elevation, this town was born from silver and gold discovered in the 1870s. At its peak, it had 2,000 residents, multiple hotels, and a reputation for being one of the toughest towns in the territory. The mines produced for decades, but when they finally closed in the 1940s, the town died. What makes Mogollon special is the journey to get there. You have to drive a narrow, winding mountain road with sheer drop-offs and no guardrails. In winter, it's completely impassable. The town itself sits in a canyon so steep that buildings cling to the hillsides at impossible angles. Inside the old structures, you'll find mining equipment, furniture, and personal items exactly where they were left. And here's the strange detail. The cemetery on the hill above town is filled with victims of mining accidents, shootouts, and a mysterious fire in 1894 that killed 5 people. No one ever figured out how that fire started. Number 13, Gleeson, Colorado. Not to be confused with the Arizona town of the same name, this Gleeson sits high in the Colorado Rockies. It started in the 1990s when silver was found and quickly grew into a community of several hundred miners and their families. But the altitude made life brutal. Winters were deadly, with avalanches that buried entire cabins. When the silver played out around 1910, survivors left as fast as they could. Today, getting to Gleeson, Colorado requires serious off-road driving and local knowledge. The town is so remote that even dedicated ghost town hunters struggle to find it. What remains are collapsed cabins, rusted equipment, and a small cemetery with wooden crosses that are barely standing. The inscriptions are mostly gone, but you can make out a few dates: 1897, 1903, 1908, all winter deaths. All people under 30. The snow that killed this town still falls there 6 months a year. Number 14, White Oaks, New Mexico. Gold created this town in 1779, and for a while it looked unstoppable. White Oaks had an opera house, multiple newspapers, and was even considered as a possible territorial capital. At its peak, 4,000 people lived here. But in 1899, the railroad chose a different route through a nearby valley that would become Carisoso. White Oaks died slowly after that. Today, it's a true hidden town in New Mexico. The old general store still stands, completely intact, with shelves full of products from the 1940s. The post office has mail sorting boxes on the wall, and the jail, a tiny stone building, still has chains bolted to the floor. But here's the unsettling part. At night, people report hearing music coming from where the saloon used to be, old-timey piano music that stops the second you get close. Number 15, Bannock, Montana. Wait, you might be thinking, Bannock isn't forgotten, and you're right, partly. But here's what most people don't know. The Bannock you can visit as a state park is only half the story. There's another section of the original town, hidden in the hills above the main site, that almost nobody goes to. It's where the Chinese miners lived in the 1860s and 70s, and it's been completely abandoned for 150 years. To find it, you have to hike off-trail through dense brush and over rocky terrain. What you'll discover are the ruins of dozens of small cabins built into the hillside, stone foundations, and remnants of sluice boxes used for placer mining. This part of Bannock was segregated, forgotten, and eventually erased from most historical records. The Chinese miners worked claims that white miners didn't want, faced constant discrimination, and when the gold ran out, they simply disappeared. No graves, no markers, no acknowledgement. Just silent ruins in the forest that tell a story most history books skip over. Which of these hidden towns surprised you the most? Comment down below. Send this to that friend who's into forgotten history, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one.